You've been called crazy for believing half the things you're about to hear, and you were right to believe them. From MKUltra to COINTELPRO, the FBI literally wrote the playbook on what sounds impossible. They didn't just break the law, they broke it so methodically, so bureaucratically, that by the time the truth leaked out, everyone had moved on. This isn't speculation. This is what they admitted to, under oath, in court, after decades of denial. Let's start with the one that destroyed trust in an entire institution. MKUltra wasn't a whisper. It was a full-scale mind control program that the CIA and FBI ran on American citizens without consent for over 20 years. The program was architected by CIA chemist Sidney Gottlieb, the man who literally designed the experiments, approved the dosing schedules, and kept the files. But here's what most people get wrong. It didn't end. It evolved. The program officially halted in the 1970s, but the architecture of what they built, the interrogation techniques, the psychological weaponization, that became standard. And MKUltra didn't emerge from nowhere. It grew out of earlier programs, Project Bluebird and Project Artichoke, which tested behavioral modification on prisoners and defectors before the methods were scaled up. Declassified documents show that between 1953 and 1973, they dosed people with LSD in hospitals, prisons, and safe houses. Not soldiers, not enemy combatants, college students, artists, people with mental illness who had no legal recourse. One man, a hospital patient, was given LSD for over a decade without ever knowing it. 40 years later, he found out. By then, his mind was already broken beyond repair. The government paid him $900,000. That's how you know it was real. They don't pay settlements for theories. And they weren't the only ones who got paid. James Whitey Bulger, the Boston crime boss, later made famous by his FBI entanglement, was an early MKUltra test subject while serving time at Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. He later said the LSD experiments gave him lifelong nightmares. The people running these tests weren't rogue actors. Sidney Gottlieb had full institutional authorization. This was policy. But MKUltra is just the foundation. It's what gave them confidence that they could do worse. COINTELPRO came next. And if you want to understand how governments actually work, not what civics class told you, but the real machinery, this is where you look. The FBI, under J. Edgar Hoover, ran a domestic counterintelligence program specifically designed to infiltrate, discredit, and destroy American political movements and civil rights groups, anti-war activists, black nationalist organizations. They didn't just monitor them. They sent in undercover agents to radicalize them. They sent anonymous letters designed to turn allies against each other. They used blackmail. They orchestrated confrontations. One memo, released in 1976, contained Hoover's explicit order to neutralize specific civil rights leaders, including Martin Luther King Jr., who was sent an anonymous letter by the FBI suggesting he kill himself. Neutralize. That's the word they used. And it's not metaphorical when you look at what happened next. The FBI had an informant inside the Black Panthers. His name was William O'Neill. What the government didn't tell anyone is that O'Neill was directly involved in setting up the 1969 raid on Fred Hampton's apartment, the raid where police killed him in his bed while he slept. Hampton was 21 years old, unarmed, the chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party and the architect of the Rainbow Coalition, a political alliance between Black, Latino, and poor white communities that terrified the establishment. The FBI knew the raid was happening. They didn't stop it. They had an asset in the room, and they let it happen. The official story was a firefight. It wasn't. It was an execution. The apartment had bullet holes on the inside of the walls where he'd supposedly fired back. Forensics later proved he never fired a shot. He was asleep when they killed him. The FBI had the evidence the whole time. But they didn't release it. They buried it. Hampton's family eventually won a civil lawsuit. The settlement totaled $1,000,085. Once again, they don't write checks for theories. This is the part that separates what sounds like conspiracy from what actually is one. Conspiracy is when multiple people lie together in the same direction over the same period of time. It's not speculation. It's coordination, and the FBI was very, very coordinated. The Church Committee investigation in 1975 exposed all of this. Senator Frank Church, Democrat from Idaho, led the investigation, and what he found was so alarming that he went on television and called American intelligence agencies a potential rogue elephant. Senators read the files on live television. It was journalist Seymour Hersh who first broke the story publicly in a 1974 New York Times front-page investigation that forced Congress to act. Americans watched their own government confess to crimes against citizens. But here's what happened next, and this is crucial. Nothing. The FBI apologized, a few people retired, the institution survived, and the technique survived. Because the really dangerous part of COINTELPRO wasn't the individual operations, it was the precedent. Once you prove you can do it without being stopped, you know you can do it again. After the Church Committee, Congress created the FISA Court, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, supposedly to provide judicial oversight over domestic surveillance and prevent another COINTELPRO. The idea was that a secret court would act as a check. What actually happened is that the FISA Court approved virtually every single government surveillance request it received. Thousands of applications reviewed, nearly zero rejections, a check that never said no. Skip forward to 2013. Edward Snowden reveals that the NSA, which works hand in glove with the FBI, is collecting data on every American through a program called PRISM. Every call, every email, and every single search. The infrastructure that was built under COINTELPRO, refined under MKUltra, blessed by the FISA court, became a total surveillance apparatus. And when it was exposed, the government response was the same. We're sorry, we'll be more careful, but we're keeping the system because the system works, not for justice, for control. But even that's not the deepest layer. The FBI has a program called the Confidential Human Source Program. It's still active right now. What it does is employ informants, often criminals, often drug dealers, to infiltrate groups and report back. Sounds reasonable, right? National security. But here's the mechanism they don't advertise. These informants are often incentivized to escalate. They get paid per actionable intelligence. So if someone vaguely talks about doing something illegal, the informant is financially motivated to push them toward actually doing it, to become a provocateur. The FBI has admitted this. They call it inducement. Documents obtained through FOIA requests show informants literally planning crimes, recruiting accomplices, and providing resources. Then the FBI arrests everyone except the informant. The informant gets immunity. The target gets prison time. This is what legal scholars call FBI informant inducement, and it has happened in terrorism cases, in militia cases, in cases where there was no actual threat until the FBI created one. Think about what that means. The FBI isn't just investigating crime anymore, it's manufacturing it and profiting from it. One case makes this visceral. The 2006 Fort Dix terror plot. The FBI used an informant. A Moroccan national paid thousands of dollars to infiltrate a group of young men in New Jersey. The informant showed up with undercover agents pretending to be terrorists with weapons. He pushed for an attack. He facilitated the planning. He provided the logistical support. Then the FBI arrested all 6 men, convicted them. The story was national headlines. FBI stops terror plot before it happens. What wasn't a headline? The investigation files showing the informant was the primary architect of the plan. The men had talked about doing something. The FBI turned talk into a federal crime, and the conviction stood. The Fort Dix case isn't an outlier. The Newburgh Four, 4 men from upstate New York convicted in 2009 of plotting to bomb synagogues and shoot down military aircraft, were recruited, equipped, and directed almost entirely by an FBI informant who paid one of the men $250,000 and provided fake missiles and fake bombs. The presiding judge called it a fantasy terror operation and said the government came up with the idea. The conviction still stood. Similarly, the Liberty City 7 in Miami, A 2006 case where 7 men were convicted of plotting to blow up the Sears Tower involved an FBI informant who posed as an Al-Qaeda operative, swore them into a fake terrorist organization he invented, and provided essentially all of the operational direction. Same pattern, different city, same result. This isn't theoretical. This is how the system actually works. But there's something even darker hiding underneath all of this, and you need to understand it because it explains why nothing ever changes. The FBI maintains a secret database called the Violent Crime Apprehension Program, ViCAP. It's designed to track serial killers and violent offenders. Sounds helpful, but the database contains information that's never released to the public, never cross-referenced with other cases. What this means statistically is that there could be patterns that would help investigators that remain hidden, not because they can't solve them, because they're choosing not to, or worse, because some of those cases involve their own assets, their own informants. Think about a criminal working for the FBI. If that criminal commits a violent crime and it happens, does the FBI prosecute their own source? Or do they bury it and move on? There's no way to know. The database is classified. And here's where your moral compass gets twisted in a direction you didn't expect. Because the real truth about these FBI conspiracies isn't that they're anomalies. It's that they're features. They're not bugs in the system. They're the system. The FBI was created with power to investigate. That power, by its nature, can be abused. But the smartest abuse looks like policy, looks like procedure, looks like justice. A good lie always has a foundation of truth. And the FBI's foundation is real law enforcement, real protection, real crime solving. But built on top of that is a structure that can and has turned inward against citizens, against movements, against the idea that government should answer to the people it serves. You've been called paranoid for noticing the patterns, for connecting the dots. But paranoia is just seeing a pattern before it's officially confirmed. And almost everything the conspiracy theorists predicted about government surveillance, about informant networks, about the weaponization of federal power, it all came true. It all checked out. The only difference between a conspiracy theory and history is time and declassified documents. The real conspiracy isn't that the FBI is evil. Most individual agents probably believe they're doing good. The conspiracy is that an institution built on power, without real accountability, will eventually use that power the way all power gets used to protect itself, to expand itself, to ensure that when it breaks the law itself can't touch it. You know what's happened since every one of these programs was exposed? Nothing structural changed. The surveillance continued. The informant networks expanded. The secret databases got bigger because the system learned something. You can confess to your crimes if you control the media narrative long enough for people to forget. You can apologize publicly while continuing privately. You can change your name and your methods, but keep your mission. This is how institutions survive, not by being perfect, by being necessary, by being too big and too integrated into the machinery of government to ever actually be dismantled. The real question isn't whether the FBI has done terrible things. You already know they have. The real question is what you do with that knowledge. Because knowing about the conspiracy and stopping the conspiracy are two completely different things. And that's the trap that never closes. They confess. You move on. They wait. Then they do it again. The system isn't broken. It's exactly what it was designed to do. This has been some unapproved thinking. Tracy out. Next.
If this story didn't sit right with you, good. You're not here to be comforted. You're here to see what others overlook. Thanks for exploring some unapproved thinking. Learn more at someunapprovedthinking.com. New episodes drop weekly. Subscribe, share, and keep questioning because the pattern's still playing out. And next time, we're going deeper.